Okay. Fine, then we'll just start. So I'll just tell you. Okay, first of all, I am Manish Agrawal. I am from FitFuture. Okay, we are the host for this program. We have approached Mr. Matt from Sensory Fitness, and we asked them to do some workshops, something new for the coaches in India to improve themselves. So we used to do a lot of trainings in this early childhood segment, motor skills and motor skills development, sensory fitness, their caps workshops, different workshops, so that we can improvise. We can help in some way to the coaches to improvise themselves. Okay, so I'll just introduce Mr. Matt. So Matt Salon is the founder of Sensory Fitness from US. He is a certified occupational therapist assistant specializing in sensory integration therapy. Matt is also a fitness professional coach. He worked with a special education teacher and adaptive PE teacher. Matt has involved in education over 25 years of working with kids, adults for ability in the multitude of settings. So, like Matt, also he provides some workshops, training. Normally, he do a physical one-on-one training. This is the first or maybe the uh, with he's doing the online first or second time. So courses, and he has made some lot of videos on how to improve the kids and all. He after this workshop, you will be getting that video access so that you can get revise yourself. You can see the videos and you can implement them in your classes. So over to you, Matt. You can start with your session.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Hello, Manish. Thank you, Manish, for having me at FitFutures. It's great to be here. Yeah, I have we have 2 hours. I have a lot of information, so I'm gonna just get to the get to it. So I don't want to waste any time. Just so you know, this is interactive. So it's challenge by choice. So if you want to interact and do it, great. If not, that's okay. You can just sit in your chair or stand and participate as much as you want. But the more you put yourself doing some of these, then it's easier to administer this kind of stuff with the kiddos. Okay. All right. Let me share my screen. Okay. Just a moment. Okay, so this is a sensory approach to working with kids, a sensory approach to fitness for working with kids. It sounds like, from what I hear, there's teachers, there's some occupational therapy assistants, some physiotherapists, coaches, a little bit of everybody, and everybody's working with kids. This stuff applies to all kids and adults as well. The basis of this is sensory. So if you're working with kids on the autism spectrum or kids with any kind of neurodiversity, this really applies. And this applies to all kids as well, because we all have sensory systems. We are all human beings, and we all operate the same way. Okay, so that's where I'm coming from. The goals of this is to help you gain an understanding of sensory processing and how that affects behavior. And when I say behavior, I don't always mean just behaving good and bad, but just functioning, doing things. Okay. Also, getting kids to a ready state, because sometimes getting kids to a place to do stuff can be difficult. They're either really high or really low. So figuring out ways to get them there, as well as using specific sensory motor activities to help them with that. Okay. Okay. This is for everybody. So I pulled a lot from a bunch of different workshops that I do, and I kind of shoved it into one, and it's a lot of fun. So my background, Manish did a great job introducing what I do. I'm an occupational therapy assistant. I specialize in sensory integration therapy. It's a specific type of therapy, and it's generally working with kids with sensory difficulties or sensory disorders. And that includes kids on the autism spectrum. A long time ago, I was a special education teacher, and my focus was in behavior. So working with kids behaviorally. I was also a PE teacher, adaptive PE teacher, a coach. I'm also a personal trainer. So I pull a lot of fitness things into this from my years of training. Myself, I also struggle with ADHD. I talk a lot. I get very excited about things. I struggled in reading and writing and math. So I have myself had some sensory difficulties. I still do. And I'm also a father. My two sons also have some sensory difficulties themselves. So I pull a lot from different places, and I'm here to present things that I found that have worked for both myself, my clients, and my own kids as well. Okay, let's get into it. I'm just gonna have to move this over here. Okay, so first let's look at what is behavior. When I say behavior, it also means like functioning. How we interpret and respond to the world is how we behave. We get sensory input from around the world. We hear, we taste, we smell, we feel, and then we have to respond to that input. And when I say respond, there's always an emotional response and a physical response. They're tied together. Our movements and our emotions are tied together in everything. And we'll get into what that actually means. Whoop. Sometimes interpreting sensory input can be difficult. And if we have difficulty with our interpreting sensory input, it can affect our emotions, and it can affect our movement, and it can affect how kids move and how their emotion, and it's all tied together. So when we're working with kids and they're not listening or they're not behaving or their motor skills are off, I like to look at the sensory reason and go from there at the very root of the problem. So when I say sensory, okay, so there's sensory disorders, right? These are people that severely struggle with sensory input. So if I'm on the autism spectrum, chances are I'm struggling with sensory input and sensory processing. So, and there's also sensory processing disorder. That's a thing. ADHD also has a significant sensory piece to it. And anybody, sometimes there's no diagnosis. People just have severe sensory difficulties, and it's a disorder if it gets in the way of functioning. When I say functioning, going out and doing things and playing sports and attending school and communicating and all of the things we do in life. And so there's disorders and there's also difficulties. Okay, we all struggle with sensory difficulties sometimes. If we are stressed, if we are in the moment stressed, or we had a crummy night's sleep, or we didn't get breakfast, or we had an argument with somebody, that puts us in a state of stress. We can have difficulty processing sensory information sometimes. Also, people with trauma can have significant sensory difficulties. Abuse, neglect, violence. These things affect how we regulate, and that affects our emotions, and it can affect how we move and our coordination and motor skills and all of that. There's a physical side to that, just kind of what I was just saying. So the physical side can be lack of sleep, pain in our shoulders, irritability, tiredness. It can even affect our balance and our motor skills, all of these things. So it's all tied together. Another reason someone might struggle with sensory difficulties if they had restricted movement. So maybe they don't have a diagnosis, or maybe they just don't have any stress. But sometimes kiddos, let's think of a kid that had a C-section. Let's start there. A C-section where the kid did not come out in utero, vaginal birth. They missed some movement coming out of that birth canal. They were taking it, and there's nothing you can do about that. Sometimes you have to give a C-section. But because of that, that is a movement that is missed, and that can have a significant impact down the road. Things like that. Kids that don't get enough tummy time or are swaddled too much, that can have a significant impact that we're restricting their movement. Also, as they go older, it's an epidemic worldwide. More screen time, less gross motor movement. Kids are going outside less and interacting with the world less. Less fine motor activities. So that's having a restriction on their movement. And that also in turn has an effect on their emotions and motor skills. So kind of this vicious cycle. Sometimes if we have stress, trauma, or restricted movement, that can give can everyone see my mouse here? Yeah, okay. So if it can start here, right? And that can produce a sensory struggle. So maybe, the noise is too loud, or they're irritable on their shirt. Their clothes just makes them irritable, something, or the smell of something. That can put a person in fight, flight, or freeze. Fight meaning I can be aggressive and yell, or flight meaning I leave. Freeze meaning I lock up and I don't know what to do. Okay, this gets a bit more complex. I'm kind of running through a lot of things quickly, but if I'm in here, that can produce a negative behavior. So a kid might act out. And then, of course, there's a negative consequence. The kid acted out, so they got in trouble. Then that kid has a negative experience, which leads to more stress or more trauma, and then, or maybe they don't participate in the football game because of all this, and it becomes this vicious cycle of, and it could all stem from one of these three things. We all seek homeostasis. Everybody wants to feel good and do well. We all want to please adults or please the people in the room or please our friends. And we all want to feel good. So this involves movement, right? I'm sure some of you are doing it. I'm doing it right now. I'm moving right now. I'm squirming. This is helping me deal with my sensory input. We fidget, we toe tap, we chew. A lot of people on the autism spectrum, they stim, they flap, hand flapping, or they jump, or there's that nervous giggling. We pace. These are all movements, and we're doing these movements to either calm ourselves down or to wake ourselves up. Okay. And if you've ever been in a boring meeting and you fall asleep or you're getting drowsy, you gotta wiggle in your seat. You're trying to wake yourself up. That's movement, and that's emotion as well. Okay. Let's look at sensory processing disorder for a second, and then we'll move on. Okay. So sensory processing disorder, that is when it is a significant impact on your life, so much it gets in the way of functioning. And it's kind of broken into three categories: modulation, which is regulating my emotions; sensory motor, which is movement; and then discrimination, being able to discriminate sensory input. We'll talk about that. So you don't have to know the difference between all these. I'm trying to paint a picture of sensory and how it affects kids, right? So sensory modulation disorder. So this is difficulty regulating emotions. Some kids are just over responsive. They're very big, very emotional. These are the kids that are big as large as life. If something goes wrong, it's the worst thing in the world, right? And then or it's the best thing in the world too, right? And then you kind of have the under responsive, the kids that are just kind of like monotone, or just they don't process as fast. You also have seekers. These are kids that go look for input. These are kids that are up and are moving around because they don't feel their body. So they pound, or they yell, or they crash into things, or they're seeking input. And we'll talk about that as well. And then there's our avoiders, kids that they sense too much. They hear everything, they see everything, they smell everything. So they try to get away because it's too much. These are kids on the autism spectrum. They're very obvious. You'll see the hands on the ears, or they'll cover the eyes, or they'll leave because it's too much to stand. So that's difficulty regulating their emotions. They can't regulate in some environments. Sensory motor disorder, that's difficulty with posture specifically. These are kids with low tone sometimes, or just really, really loosey-goosey joints. They have difficulty with their posture, right? Dyspraxia, they have difficulty with movement. They're choppy. They don't have motor skills, motor planning. It's so difficult for them. So it specifically affects that. And then there's discrimination. So these are kids that can't interpret sensory input. So I had a girl that when her mother spoke, her hands hurt. The sound of her mother's voice made her hands hurt. So that's a discrimination issue. That's difficult, right? That's difficult to go into the world if sound makes you physically in pain, or a smell makes you do certain things. The wires are not crossed the way they should be. So these are all these sensory issues. When I was in a clinic and I'm working as an occupational therapy assistant, I would use sensory strategies to help kids. I'd work helping their senses, their sensory system integrate and work together as a unit, right? This can all be helped through sensory strategies and intentional movement. It doesn't have to be in just a clinic. You don't have to send your kid to a specialist. I mean, it helps, obviously. But I feel like the more people that understand the sensory piece of it, the more, number one, the more we can help kids, and the more we can give kids a break and stop holding them accountable for their actions sometimes it's not their fault. So we think of sometimes we ask a kid to do something and they don't do it, we think it's a won't do, when oftentimes it's a can't do. They can't do some things because of the sensory input or the motor skills because it's so difficult. So this is stuff, things we'll go over. You can do at home, in a classroom, in a clinic, most environments, most fitness setting, gross motor movement areas, right? Okay. Any questions so far? That was a lot of information. Sorry. And feel free, if you have a question, I'm okay with anyone interrupting. That's completely fine. Or write it down. You can ask it during break as well. So this is a great, as I'm sure maybe some of the people in occupational therapy have seen this visual. This is a really neat visual of the central nervous system and how we function. Okay. Look at the very top of the pyramid. It's academic learning. That's higher cognitive thinking. We can also put a skill up here, a sports skill, kicking a soccer ball or hitting a cricket ball. These are highly complex cognitive skills that are up here, right? In order for this to be here, in order for us to do these things, we need a certain level of behavior. And we also had to have done our daily living activities, like taking care of going to the bathroom, brushing our teeth, eat some food, drink some water. That's what that means, okay? So at this top, it's pretty complex. And we ask our kids sometimes to kick balls and to behave well in a classroom and to do certain sport skills. We'll insert whatever you want. But if these things below here the kids are having difficulty with, then this red part up here can be quite difficult. Now we're not going to go through all of this, but the yellow bars is perceptual motor. Eye-hand coordination needs to be there. Eye control, the postural adjustment. In order for that to be there, I need sensory motor development. I need to have a secure posture. I need to have awareness of the two sides of my body. I need to have motor planning. Okay, and we're going to get into this green one a bit. And at the very bottom, at the base here, is our sensory systems, okay? There's 7 senses. There's actually 8. We're not going to talk about the 8th one. But today we're going to look at these 3, the very bottom ones: tactile, vestibular, and proprioception. They're at the very bottom. And when I say we're going to incorporate these sensory strategies, these 3 in particular, and we'll talk about each one. Okay, let's look at function. I might skip through this. Well, so let's take a step back here for a second. Common biomechanics and undeveloped motor skills. You'll see some of these: low tone, the way kids walk sometimes, motor planning, lordosis, where their back is kind of curved, or kyphosis, their head's down like that, poor posture, foot, hip, ankle issues. These are some things you might see. Toe walking is a big one, especially in the autism population. So these are some motor skills you might see. One thing, if you take away anything today, this I feel is probably the most important. This I put at the very, very bottom. I like to do things through play and motivation. I can make a kid do an exercise and they're going to get stronger or they're going to get more coordinated. That may be so. It may be really, really tough for them. But if I keep at it, that kid can keep learning and doing better, right? But if he doesn't like it, it's going to be a lot more difficult. Or if I have trouble managing them in the classroom or the gym or wherever I am, it can be super difficult. So I like to use play and motivation. I like to use play because everyone likes to play a game. Everyone likes to have fun. And I find what motivates the kid, because if a kid is motivated by it, they're going to do it and they're going to learn it 10 times better. They're also going to transfer that skill. Here's a simple one, right? Tying shoes can be really difficult, especially for little kids. And that's a skill. It's a fine motor skill. Now I can teach a kid to work on their shoe tying every day or once a week or whatever, and do it and do it and do it. And I'll get there. I will get there, because I'll be persistent. But but that skill that kid learned, that's the fine motor skill. He or she might not be able to transfer that fine motor ability into anything else. Whereas if I was playing fine motor games and strengthening the hand and making my fingers dexterous and strengthening elbow and shoulder joints, then I teach the skill later. Then I have a greater chance of not only teaching that skill, but also the fine motor skills transfer to greater things, okay? So I like to use play. but sometimes it can be really hard. I'm sure you've all been there where you have the one kid that's just kind of blah. They're just kind of down there. They're kind of mushy, or they're not motivated. They're not having fun. They have low energy, or they're overwhelmed, or maybe they have super low tone. So one of the things I like to look at is getting kids passively to participate. I look at passive participation and active participation. I want to get kids from here to here. Okay. That's meaning the right amount of energy, they're regulated, and I activate that muscle tone to help them do that. We'll talk about how to get that to happen. So here's a great example. I use a lot of swings. I like swings. If you have the ability to use swings, they're fantastic. A hammock in particular it can be really cool. And we'll talk a little bit about swings today. But so if I have a kid come in and they're just kind of low, and I can see right away they're not going to want to participate, I might just put them in the hammock and push them. Okay, so I'm doing the work. The kid's just sitting there. But that kid is getting so much out of that swinging. They're activating the vestibular system and they're getting some input. We'll talk about that. But then as I see the kid kind of become more alert, then I might put a rope in his hand and I'll pull the rope. And now I'm pulling the kid. So he's holding the rope and I'm holding the rope. Now we are doing the work together. After a little while, I might take that rope or bungee cord and attach it to the wall. So now the kid is now pulling himself. So he is doing the work now. So finding opportunities to get kids to do where I do, we do, you do, okay? Going from passive to active by using play and motivation, teasing that out, teasing the kids out. You can have the opposite as well. So you have a kid come in and they're really high alert and they're too much. So finding ways to get them to that optimal performance level. I'll call it that. So high alert, kind of in the red zone. They're too much energy. Low alert, they're kind of in the blue zone. They're kind of blue. And then green zone is where I want them to be. Okay, and our sensory systems are in charge of getting us here, but we as practitioners can help that. Okay, so as I'm going through this, I want you to keep these three things in mind as we go. Play and motivation, the kid's alert level, and then passive and active participation. How can I get this kid to be passively get them, tease them out into doing a game or something? Okay, any questions on that? Okay. All right, let's get into the sensory piece. All right, we'll start moving around here in a minute. So let's go back to this. Again, we want to be here. We want kids to do skills, motor skills, behavior skills, teamwork skills, all the skills up here. We want them to be here. But let's zoom down here and look at these three sensory, these three senses, and see how we can incorporate these into everything that we do. Okay. So when I do an exercise, I'm going to make sure that there's some tactile in there, some vestibular and some proprioception in there to get the kids going. Because it's all about this. The blue one is all about regulation. I want the kids emotionally and attention there to be their regulate. I want their emotions to be regulated. I'll skip that part. Okay, your tactile system. Tactile is outside in. It's skin and hair, right? We have skin and hair, and anytime something touches it, our tactile is the one that lets us know. It's light touch and deep pressure. So there's pleasure and pain in that, right? So that's what tactile is, light touch and deep pressure. So if I do this, that's tactile as well. This is a really interesting thing. You can I wrote it a little easier, but everyone should have this handout. You can take a deeper look at this, but I've got a simpler model I'll go over now, okay? So this applies to all senses, but it's really obvious in the tactile. I'll use an example as tactile, right? So some of the kids, they have difficulty with registering information. So that means, let's say I touch a kid on their arm. They don't feel it. It just doesn't register for whatever reason. Maybe they have difficulty with discrimination, or they have they just don't register for some reason. So sometimes they don't feel. So oftentimes those kids are my seekers, meaning they're going to go get tactile input. because then they're going to get up, they're going to crash, bash, this kind of stuff. My son often would draw on himself all the time when he was younger. And I was like, what? That's crazy. Why is he always drawing on himself? So I'm trying to do all these sensory activities and nothing was working. And he's a bouncy kid. He's a ping pong ball. He's all over the place. His behavior was pretty bad as a young kid. But what I saw was one day he was at the beach and he was the most calm I've ever seen him ever. He was playing in the sand. He had dug a hole. He had sand all up and down his arms. And I was like, oh, he's seeking tactile input. He sought that tactile input because it made him feel good. It organized his brain. So he was jumping up and down because he wanted to crash into things to let his body know, or let his brain know where his body was, okay? Then we have the kids that are high registration. They sense everything. We kind of talked about that earlier. So they are my avoiders. These are the kids that sometimes they pull their sleeves over their hands, or they have their hoods up or hats down, or they don't engage with anything, or they, especially the little guys, they'll hold things quite a bit because this part of my hand, my palm is very, very sensitive. So if something's in my hand, I don't have to worry about touching stuff. I'm protected. This is a defensive pose for me. Some of my kids walk like this because I'm up. I don't want to touch anything. Keep away from me. So we want to incorporate tactile activities to help the seekers get what they need to organize their brain, as well as help the avoiders to help get that sensory system regulated. Okay, so it gets a little more complicated with stuff like that. So it can look like just what I talked about. Seekers are sometimes squirmy. They take their clothes off. They hit, bite. My self-injurious kids, sometimes they headbang. That can be happening. That could be because they're seeking tactile input. Also, my avoiders, all this stuff here. They don't like messy. They don't like hand messy. They're squirmy. They don't eat certain things. This kinds of behaviors, let's say. All right, so what can you do to help if you see some of these behaviors? Number one, allow as much skin contact as the kid wants to. So if it's okay, and everyone can do it right now. I don't know how many people have their shoes on, but go ahead and take your shoes off. And it could be that simple. And just keep your feet on the ground. You can use things like this. This is a spiky thing I have on the ground that I put my feet on, and it gives me tactile input. It could be something that simple, having kids stand on that, think like that. So allowing as much skin contact as possible. Also, deep pressure. Deep pressure is squeezing. That's also stuff you can do. What I wouldn't do is I wouldn't make them touch anything they wouldn't want to, and I wouldn't come up and touch them unexpectedly. So I'd let them know, hey, Jimmy or Bob or whatever, I'm behind you, and I'll place, and then I'm going to put my hand on you, but not letting them know I'm about to be there, okay? Light touch can raise your alert level, and deep pressure can help calm you down. It kind of depends on the person, because sometimes light touch can also be calming, but it depends on the kid. But deep pressure usually calms someone down. Okay, let's do a little tactile break, okay? If you're able to, and if you want to, these are things you can do as exercises, but the point is not the exercise, it's the tactile input. This is a way to get kids mentally and emotionally on track. So it could be simple as an army crawl. So just, if you can get on the floor. Getting on the floor and just crawl across the floor. That's simple. That's simple. So that could be an exercise, but I'm looking for tactile input. Another one is on my back. On my back is fantastic. And I'm doing shrimps. I got to push myself across the floor. Log rolls, just on my back, and I'm rolling across the floor. If you have fabric, so like that's an active thing to do, right? That's a great warm-up to get kids ready, okay? Because you're getting that tactile input. Remember, we want to get them ready to do stuff. So I've just given them a bunch of tactile input. That's awesome. If you have fabric, I'm going to make myself, sorry, I'm going to make my screen bigger here. How do I do that? Sorry. Can everyone see me okay? Okay. So having fabric is one way to get kid tactile input, and it can be lycra. This is a tunnel where I can have kids climb through. But maybe they don't want to move their body. So I might even put, here's my kiddo. I'll put them on the fabric. It could be a big sheet. It could be lycra. It could be a couple giant pillows. And I'm just going to drag them around. This is not a great example. So I'm just dragging the kid around in the fabric. Okay. And it's fun. It's fun for the kid. They're getting a lot out of it. Let's see. So deep pressure. Oh, okay. So things like weighted vests. If anyone, okay, if you have mats with you, oh, I'm gonna unshare my screen again. Sorry, I forgot. Okay, another thing you can do is, so think of that as friction. Any way to get their bodies rolling across the ground or some kind of friction, right? If you have a giant beanbag, if anyone has a pillow right now, you can lay on the ground. Well, I'm gonna picture. Here's my child. Okay, here's my beanbag. So that I have the beanbag on, and I can push on it. And maybe they have to push back. Maybe they have to wrestle me, and I'm just keeping them on the ground, or they're against the wall, and I'm holding them against the wall. You know, being careful, of course, but looking for that deep pressure. I'm not trying to smother them. Watching and then maybe they have to wrestle me, or push back, or roll, things like that. Another great one that I love is the yoga ball smash. So I'll have my kids standing against the wall, and I'll throw it at them, and it's that impact, whap. Being careful of the face, not too hard, of course, but and they can run back and forth, they can dodge it, and they can do all this stuff. So it's fun, and they're getting that tactile input. Okay. Oh, and the last one, sorry, and jumping crash. I'm sorry. This is a good one we can all do right now. So if you have a bed or some pillows, this is something you could do at home. But having a whole bunch of pillows, let me move this out of the way, or mats or something large, and just having the kids run and crash, and they get up again, and they run, and that impact. Okay. If you have suspension, monkey bars, or you're at a playground, you have a trapeze, something they could sit and swing and crash. All of that is for tactile input. Okay, any questions on that? Oh, say again?
You're on mute, Mike.
Yeah, hear you, Mike.
Okay, how do you know which category to put the kids in? Light touch, deep pressure, impact?
It doesn't matter. You know, if it's one of those things. So if you start doing that and you notice the kid's alert level going too high, then I stop. And maybe I try it again. Yeah. This is not a hard and fast black and white kind of science. It's because this nervous system is so different for everybody, and we also, our nervous systems and what we need sensory wise, input wise, can change daily, right? Sometimes you need a walk. Sometimes you need to go to the gym more than more the other days, or sometimes, you need more quiet, or things like that. So, but it's a safe bet doing these tactile activities, maybe as a warm up, and then you get into, because you're doing a lot more than just getting, what are you doing? We are giving the kid body awareness, and we're priming their tactile system. We're getting their nervous system to kind of start working a little bit more, because if they have a tactile issue, this is going to help. If they don't have a tactile issue, it's still going to help, because kids are developing their sensory systems from in utero all the way up to about 12, 14, and then it's kind of a different ball game. But this stuff still applies. But those are crucial years to help that nervous system to integrate. Okay.
I put a kid on a crash pad. He keep on jumping on the crash pad for like maybe 5 minutes. But after the 5 minutes, when we have to take him out to do some other things, he would headbutt the teachers. He literally headbutt the teachers all the time. So all the teachers are very fearful of the kid.
Okay, great. So his alert level's way up. He's becoming dysregulated, right? So that's when we'll add some proprioception. And we'll get to that in a second. Well, can I come back to that? We'll come back to that. Okay.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yes.
Sir, I'm asking that before we teach motor skills to the students, we should teach them sensory skills?
I don't look at this as teaching.
Okay.
We are just doing it. We're doing it. You can incorporate this while, let's say you're teaching a motor skill. What give me a motor skill is something you work on.
Like hand-eye coordinations.
Okay.
Game.
Yes. So if a kid if a kid is not struggling with the hand-eye coordination,
Okay.
That's okay. But not every single kid is, everything's a spectrum. We have our kids that are amazing athletes right out the gate. And then we have everybody else, right? To the people that can't even tie their own, can hardly even walk sometimes, right? And then we have everybody in between. So doing these things is going to help with the motor skills anyway. This is foundational stuff before we get to the motor skills. You can still do the motor skill. That's okay. Still teach it, and you'll see if you need to work on it more. But if a kid doesn't have their tactile system or their vestibular system isn't working properly, it can make that motor skill really, really difficult. Okay. Or even if I'm really young as well, because they are still developing.
So we have to observe that they are struggling with motor skills or not. Then we have to go to sensory skills.
That is key. Observing your kid is 100% number one priority. As soon as they walk in the door, I'm looking at that kid, how they walk, where they're looking, how they react to other kids in the classroom, and you'll know the kids that are struggling. You'll see it right away. Okay.
Thank you.
Mac, I have a question.
Yes.
So you spoke about seekers and avoiders, right?
Yes.
So if my child is an avoider and I can't do all those things that you just did, right? They may not want to do any of them. In which case, you said you can try this as probably like a warm up and then go on. And if my child comes with high level of feedback and they just don't want to do anything, they just come sit in a corner, how do I get them out? This may not work.
So glad you asked. So this is where, so I usually start with vestibular. I'm glad you asked that. It's perfect timing. So sometimes kids that are avoiding, right? This isn't always the case, but if I have a kid that's kind of stuck in because me doing something, moving, I have to say, you go, let's do push-ups, let's do jumping jacks. That's a lot to ask. Just think of like if you're ever stuck in a big, big couch and you have to get up, how hard that is, and you're way back and you have to get up. It's really hard. But if somebody pushed you, woo, you'd get right up, right? So we want to kind of jump. We want to get kids to kind of feel their body a little bit. So, okay, let me come back to that as well as Mike's question as well. Well, let's look at the vestibular system. Vestibular is movement of the head, and that has to do with balance and spatial orientation. Okay, where my head is, because that's vestibular. Kids that vestibular seek, they're a lot of times they'll move their head. They're doing this a lot, or they're spinning. They like spinning, or they're jumping around. That you'll see them upside down quite a bit. The kids that are avoiding, they don't like to move at all. So if you ask them, or they have trouble laying back or laying forward. So if you ask them, imagine a kid like that has difficulty with the vestibular system. You ask them to do sit-ups, they're not going to do it. Or maybe your kiddo, Kapilev? I can't see. I don't have my glasses. Did I say your name right? Kapilev? Okay. So maybe your kiddo in the back, it could be he just doesn't want to move. It could be auditory as well. We'll talk about that.
Yeah.
So lots of vestibular movement will definitely increase your level. Have you all been on a roller coaster? Okay. How do you feel when you get off the roller coaster? You're up. You're wow. You didn't do any work. All you did was sit there, right? But because you got that vestibular system activated, your alert level's way up. Sometimes that can cause dysregulation, kind of like Mike's kid, right? So he's jumping around. It could be the vestibular input that's making him dysregulated. Spinning can also dysregulate a kid very easy, up to even 4 hours later. If a kid really likes to spin, I would go 10 times, then 10 times, do that a few times, then stop and do something else, okay? Because spinning, it messes with your head. So I'm looking for rhythm. So things that are arrhythmic, Mike, so your kid is jumping and landing in the crash pad and then they don't want to stop. That could be kind of arrhythmic. But if you can maybe find a rhythm to it, boom, jump, crash, jump, crash, jump, crash, jump, crash, and let that kid kind of find his rhythm and then slowly transition to another thing. It could be a little different. That could be it as well. Because if they're just jumping and flopping all over the place, that's kind of arrhythmic, and that could be an issue. Okay. I'm going to skip this part. But okay, so some vestibular activities that you can do. These are easy. So this is great. Everyone going to write our names with our face. Okay, so everyone right now, write your name with your head. Okay, how do you feel? Are you a little bit more alert? I love looking at the pictures everyone's doing. It's great, but it's a way to kind of wake kids up a little bit by getting their heads. You can do a thing called eye jacks. I'm just going to move my computer in. Eye jacks. I just move my heads up, my eyes up, down, up, down, up, down. Eyes left, right, left, right, left, right. Those are called eye jacks. The visual system is very closely related to the vestibular system. So my visual is almost married to it. Same with the auditory. Okay. So also rolling. I mean, we just did a bunch of rolling activities. If you're up for it, get down on the ground, give me some rolls, somersaults, bouncing. Okay. If I'm sitting on a yoga ball, all I'm doing is getting some vestibular input. Swings are fantastic. How much time do we have here? Okay, almost done an hour here. Okay, any questions on vestibular? Again, I'll use vestibular to kind of start with the times to get the kids' alert level up. Okay, and proprioception is what I'll use to kind of bring kids back down, help organize. Proprioception is inside out. It's force, weight, gravity. I sense weight, okay? So if I pick something up, that's my proprioception. It's active muscle use. Some kids, it's proprioception responsible for all of these things here, weight adjustment, applying pressure. So some of those kids that take the ball and they throw it super hard, or it's like, bleh, right? It's kind of hard. Co-contraction. So when I pick something up, I have to co-contract my muscles. My bicep and my tricep have to co-contract to keep it in a place. Some of the kids have trouble with that. It's all here or all here, or right? Or it's kind of choppy. Co-contraction is a big deal. They're clumsy. They have too much pressure, not enough pressure. Kids that don't feel, they don't sense proprioception. These are my kids that take off. They start running a lot. Or they chew. They'll chew on their pens. They'll chew on anything. Their shirt. Because these muscles right here, my masseter muscles, are two of the strongest muscles I have in my body, and they have a lot of mechanoreceptors in there. So they're getting a lot of input like that. So one thing you can do is add gum to your activities that help them get that input. These are my hitters. They hit things. It's not so much the tactile input. They like that, or they pick things up. They like to pick up big jugs of water or whatever. There's also low tone, which tone is not something you can fix, but all tone is it takes longer to activate my muscle. Okay, I can do this, but someone with low tone takes, right? And they're kind of, it's loose around the joints, which we'll talk about when we get to the motor skills part. Very little oomph. So some things I can do, I'm gonna unshare my screen here. Okay, some things that I can do. So kids that have difficulty, or if I'm standing there, let's say you line your kids up in the gym or the classroom, whatever, and you want them to pay attention, and they're walking all over the place. Excuse me, I'm gonna move this. They have trouble staying still. Give them a defined space. It could be something as simple as a dot, right? So once the dot's on the ground, that tells me where to stand. It's that simple, okay? That's visual. It could be something physical, right? So something I stand on that gives me some feedback. This gives me tactile and proprioceptive feedback. Okay, so it lets me know where my body is, and that's going to help me stay in one place. It could even be, this is a steering wheel cover. It doesn't have to be expensive, right? Things like that. I like Bosu balls. I like these because they're so big and they're stable and they're unstable at the same time. But things like that, giving them a defined space. If you don't have any of that, fine. Have them stand against the wall. Boom. Now I know where my body is. This helps me know. Oh, okay, I'll stand here. Okay. I have so many variations of this. There. Sorry, I see a question. How much should be duration for vestibular break for a seeker and avoider? Like a break. We'll come back to that. Deepta. Sorry, I'm very bad at pronouncing names. I apologize if I mangle anyone's name.
Yeah, it's Paritosh Dipta actually. Paritosh.
I'm sorry. Say that again.
It's Paritosh. It's yeah. So it's something like if we are giving some activity to a kid, if he's a seeker, so we are giving him bouncing on a ball. So how much is it 5 minutes, 15 minutes, or 30 minutes for a seeker? And how much for the avoider who doesn't want to sit on a ball or who doesn't want to stand on a balance board? So how much?
There's no answer for that. It's number one, it depends on the kid. Number two, it depends on what you're doing. You know, if I was working with a kid one-on-one and they want to bounce on the ball the whole time, they're probably doing that because their body needs it. So I'm going to do my best to incorporate that bouncing ball into whatever I'm doing. But if you got a room full of kids, that can be hard. So, you know, giving them and doing your best to make sure they get that for as long as you can, or watching signs for dysregulation. So watching if they start becoming giddy, if their alert level's going up, or if they start falling over, then it's maybe time to transition to something else.
Okay.
It's not, there's no right answer for that question. It's just, you got to know your kid, got to know what are you doing at the time and your environment. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So priming can help. So priming can help, like proprioception, letting me know where my body is internally. Any of that stuff we do, tactile, vestibularly, All that's going to help me kind of prime my proprioception. Also, it's going to help those kids with low tone get a little bit more tone in their muscles for a short period of time while you do that activity. It's like a warm up, right? So if I just do some bouncing, I'm priming my muscles to tense up a little bit, and that's going to help with joint stability, because that's important. A lot of our kids with low tone, I'm not really worried that they can or cannot do stuff. They're as strong as anyone else, but it's their joints that are unstable. So if they hyperextend something because they have low tone, that can be dangerous. So I'm going to do what I can to help get their body awareness and to get that tension in order to secure the joint a little bit more. Okay? So that's for our kids with low tone. Moving weight, if you're doing exercises with kids, if some straight up exercises, those are fantastic, but some of the kids don't like, to weight lift. This is dead weight. Let's see, I'm gonna unclip this here again. Sorry, stop share. All right, so this is dead weight. This is something heavy. It doesn't matter. And you want kids to exercise, that's great, but that can be difficult. Whereas something shifting weight can be a little bit more dynamic. If anyone has a pillow, pick up your pillow right now and hold it in your hand. Like, that's dead weight, okay? That's dead weight. I can pick it up. And it can be something even bigger. But if I take another pillow and put it on top, that's shifting weight, okay? Now I have to use my balance a little bit more. It's going to help me get some more proprioceptive input. And it's more fun. So shifting weight, things that shift. If I had a big teddy bear, this is shifting. I have to pick it up. Or if I have two. Things that shift. It's helping with my proprioception. Resistance weight, okay? Things that pull back or push back. So things like if anyone has a resistance band, you can pick that up right now. So if I have a resistance band, I'm pulling it, but it's pulling me back. That's helping me with my co-contraction, okay? So if, let's say I have an activity where I'm moving, I don't know, let's just pretend here, I have to move this stuff from here to here. So I have to pick it up and move it. Maybe it's weights. Okay, that could be a game. So all I want to do is add a resistance band to that activity, okay? So now I'm getting some more internal body awareness. It's letting me know where my hips are, and I can feel it more in my muscles. So I'm doing the same activity, but I'm just moving. I've just added the proprioception, whatever that is, or maybe I have to run, right? It could be a football or a rugby ball. It could be a balloon where I push and it pushes back. Maybe I have to pop it. I push because it's pushing back. Different ways of getting proprioception, as well as body weight. So I can crawl. So if I'm crawling on the ground, everyone that can experience this right now, if you get on the ground and just crawl, you're experiencing that co-contraction, right? If I'm pushing and I have to co-contract my muscles in order to hold me up. Same thing as if I'm hanging. I'm suspended. All right. This is body weight. So that's the way I think of it. So if I'm using weights in any way, or I'm trying to improve proprioception in a kiddo, I'm kind of looking at those kind of four things. And when you start doing that, it's more fun. You explore new movements, explore new tools, new equipment, and it's a lot more diverse. And then you get the kids invested. All right. All right, are we going on about an hour here? Make sure everyone gets a break. I'm not uploading too much. Okay, this is the last thing before we'll take a little break, but let's look at our alert level. So you just asked me when would be a good time to switch activities, okay? So I can't remember who said that. I don't remember who said that, but you're always observing the kid. So things to look for. I'm looking at their alert level. So if I'm doing an activity and I see the alert level rising, maybe it's time to change up. Or if I see a lot more stimming, that's because maybe the kid is getting too high, or maybe they're not following directions as much, or their eyes are shifting. The shifty eyes are a really telltale sign, especially some of those kids that internalize things. Look at their eyes. If they're not looking at you anymore, they're shifting back and forth. That could be internal anxiety. Their breath, listen to their breath. That's time to, okay, we need to slow it down. Or if they're talking a lot, they'll start just talking way more than they usually. Things like that. So vestibular and light touch can bring the alert level up. Deep pressure and rhythmic can help kind of bring it down. And proprioception. So if I've done a lot of vestibular or tactile things, doing heavy work, moving heavy things is going to help me feel a bit more organized. There's a reason you feel good after you go exercise, or you go to the gym, or you go for a run. Yes, you got all the cardio and the muscle use and the blood flow, but also you're releasing these chemicals in your brain that help organize your mind, your thinking process. Okay, helps with ADHD, helps with everything. It's exercise, it's moving heavy weight. Okay, proprioception, moving heavy weight, heavy work will help kind of organize a mind. So if a kid is spinning out of control, that's when I would add some kind of heavy work. Okay. Heavy work and deep pressure, right? So if I have anxiety, or if I'm out of control, or I'm dysregulated, that can often put me in fight, flight, or freeze. Okay, which releases cortisol in my brain. Cortisol is the high octane chemical in my brain I need for action. When the cheetah's chasing me, I want cortisol. But if I don't want it throughout my day, if I'm doing heavy work and deep pressure activities, that helps decrease the cortisol and increase serotonin and dopamine. Serotonin helps me organize my mind, and dopamine helps kind of calm me down. Okay, so you're doing more than you think when you do these activities. Remember, priming your client, you want them to their optimal performance range. What we're doing is we're also increasing body awareness. And we want to activate their muscle tone. We're letting them know where their body is in space. All right. Everyone right now, no matter where you are, look around the room. Look around, or if you're not in the space you normally work with your kids, think about the space you work in. What's going on around you? Just have a look, okay? Be aware of the sensory input going on, okay? Be aware of all visual, audio, smell, taste, touch, all of these things. Take into account all the sensory input that could be going on in your room. Visually, if there's a lot of clutter, that can be an issue, okay? Helping kids with visual blockers, so maybe using mats to kind of block out the visual. Think of your position where you're standing. Are you standing with your back to the wall? Is your kid with their back to the wall and they're looking out behind you and the whole gym is behind there? That can be difficult. So maybe switching places. So my back is against the wall and the kid's looking at me and they just have the wall to look at. Things like that. Is there lots of moving objects going on? When I was a teacher, I would give my kids fitness breaks, and I had 3 places the kids could go. They could go play basketball, they could go do boxing, or they could go do yoga. Almost 100% of the time, the kids that came back from playing basketball were always way more excited, and I had a lot more time calming them down. The difference being was the activities. Basketball, it's echoey. There's lots of running, not a lot of body awareness, lots of the ball moving back and forth, and it raises your alert level. Right? Boxing is a lot of hitting, a lot of getting that tactile smash, my heavy work. Yoga is calm and heavy, and it's calming. So those 2 categories, those 2 activities were a lot more calming than the basketball was. What's going on auditory? What can the kids hear? Is there a noise, or is there a fan in the background? Do you talk too much? That's my problem sometimes with my kids. I talk too much. They start looking at me like, shut up. Do you use music? Music's okay. But music with words can be more difficult than music without words, than just the rhythm, stuff like that. The pitch of your voice, just keeping these things in mind, especially if you're working with kids on the spectrum, auditory is a very big deal sometimes, where it's just too much. So you're taking into account the auditory, the noises in your environment, even your own voice. Smell and taste, I don't get into this too much, but just, some kids don't like the smell of you or the gym or the equipment. Just keeping that in mind. Maybe you'll see kids do that where they sniff stuff a lot. Assessments, I'm not going to get into. This is a whole another thing. I pull a lot of different stuff from a lot of different workshops, but if we have time, which I don't think we will, but talking about primitive reflexes is a really good, if you know a little bit about that, it's a really good way to look at a kid and see how they move and know that there's some motor skill difficulty and some sensory difficulties. But we'll save that for another time, I think. Yeah, we'll save that for another time. Okay, that's part one. Why don't we take is a 5-minute break okay for everybody? Use the restroom, get some water, and we have 1 more hour left. Sound good? And if anyone has any questions, you can ask me. I'm just going to sit here. Might be a good time as well.
Hi, Matt. Can you hear?
Hi, yes.
Yeah. Okay. This is Rukaya. I'm managing a school which has a preschool section. So I would like to know, like, if we can incorporate all these things as like there are already we are having like motor skills and so all these kind of activities for the preschool, but the sensory part is kind of overlooked, especially where I work. So can we have some kind of a program where we can have a scheduled time for the children to get at least their daily dose of sensory input? Like I do see a lot of kids struggling with sensory issues in the preschool because they're not getting that maybe at their home. So can we have some kind, and if so, then how long should that, how long a session should that be like?
And so then I start looking at what's called a sensory diet. And a sensory diet is just like a food diet, whereas you need to feed your body throughout the day, give yourself food throughout the day in order to sustain. Because if you wake up and you don't eat breakfast by noon, you're really hungry and your behavior's differently. Same thing with sensory input. Giving it throughout the day is the best. And there is no one way, there's no right way. It's just making sure that kids have access to more movement, period, can help. Now, those kids with sensory difficulties that struggle, that's when you kind of look at the specific kind of movement, like we got the story about the basketball and the boxing and the yoga. So it's not so much when and how long, it periodically throughout the day, and making sure that they're getting that, they're crawling and they're picking heavy things up, and they are being able to swing or roll or do somersaults, these kinds of movements that, think of like if when a kid goes outside to play, that's generally the kind of movement they're getting in. They're climbing trees, they're rolling down hills. That right there is tactile, vestibular, and proprioception all rolled into one. But kids wake up, they got to catch the bus, they got to eat breakfast, they got to get to school, then they got to sit and they got to listen to the teacher. They may have this much recess or PE, and then it's time to get back on the bus. Then they got to do homework, and then it's time for family, and then it's bedtime. So that movement is sometimes restricted. So just making number one, you can incorporate a lot more movement into the classroom, and incorporating like active seating, things like yoga balls to sit on, or making sure you incorporate movement into the learning. So instead of just sitting there lecturing or writing, physically moving and doing jump math or spelling bees where they have to, things like that. And bringing, I don't know what it's like in India, but in the United States, we've decreased PE, we've decreased music, we've decreased art, and significantly, and to the point of some of the kids don't even get them at all. They can opt out of them, and that's all movement based. Obviously PE, but music and art is also moving. That's fine motor. It's motor planning. It's proprioception. It's tactile. It's all of these things that we've reduced. So I don't know if that answered your question. Sorry.
Yeah, I got some really great ideas, Matt. Thank you so much.
And if anyone has any questions after this, please feel free to reach out via email or on social media. And I'm happy to answer questions anytime. I might just run to the restroom real quick and I'll be right back. Pardon me.
Hello everyone, Manish here. So in case anyone is facing some challenges with technical difficulties in Zoom and all, so nothing to worry. We will give you the recording access after the session. And Matt has shared some videos, that access also we will be providing you. And about the certificate, definitely Matt will be sharing. It will take some time. We need at least 3-4 days to share all the access to you.
Thank you, Manish.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Matt, can I ask you a question, please, if you don't mind?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, so I just want to know, when we are dealing with the sensory motor, what is the age criteria we are taking into consideration?
Probably ages 3 to 14.
Okay.
I mean, we censor, yeah. I mean, it's different, obviously, for the younger kids. Yeah.
So 3 to 14 years, we are able to improve the sensory motor stimulation.
Yeah. I mean, ages 3 is kind of a little young, but yeah. But I would, if you would start noticing things on a kiddo maybe at 3 and how they walk, or yeah, absolutely. Everything from like, even if a baby missed crawling, that to me is a sensory motor issue. Oh, what's going on there? Why isn't that kid crawling? And I'm going to keep my eye on him or her. All the way up to
See, right? That what you're talking is about the milestones of the child development. But
milestone.
but 14 years, what do we take into consideration?
14 years, yeah. I mean, we'll cover that in a second. But
okay,
what do I take into consideration? Their coordination, their ability to motor plan, their ability, their posture, that kind of stuff. And even after 14, I mean, even as an adult, we can still work on these things. But yeah, let's get into that and we'll get more into, so you probably answer your question.
Yeah.
Manish, can I start, or wait a minute?
We can start, Matt. Nothing to wait.
Okay. All right. So active participation is fantastic. Anytime a kid is doing anything moving wise, that's great. They're going to benefit from that. But you can also be intentional about those activities. Okay. And we're going to kind of go up a step further from what we're just looking at. So we just kind of looked at the sensory piece of it, the sensory systems, and how that plays into regulation. All that stuff we did was to kind of give kids body awareness and get them mentally and emotionally ready to be able to participate. Okay, it's this kind of game. Sometimes the kids are real high or they're really low. We're always trying to get them to that to be at a ready state. Okay. Now we're going to jump up to the green here, to the sensory motor development, right? And we're going to look at these 3: postural security, that's having a stable posture, and I'm going to look at awareness of 2 sides of my body. Okay, that's 2 arms, 2 ears, 2 eyes, 2 legs. All of these things have to coordinate. Okay. And then we're going to look at motor planning. I'm not going to worry about this stuff up here. This is, if you're working on this, the body scheme, the reflexes, the ability to screen, that's gonna just kind of come with it. But this is the foundation to motor skills. Before I can throw a ball, before I can catch a ball, before I can take a stick and hit something with it, I need to have postural security and bilateral awareness. That has to be there. Okay, and that starts to developing as a baby, right? That starts to develop before 3 years old. So we're going to work on these things, and that's going to give me an internal perception of how my body responds to everything, which will help with perception. That's going to help me with my eye-hand coordination. It's going to help me with my eye control and adjust my posture in order to do stuff. It's going to help me perceive the world externally, which will also help me with cognitive motor skills. Okay, here's a simpler version. I'm going to focus on these two things: postural security and bilateral awareness. Okay, using play and motivation. That's always a key for me. I'm always going to promote that. If a kid doesn't want to do it, then find a way to play a game. Find what motivates that kid to do something. It's going to make a huge difference. So if I'm working on these two things, that's going to help my motor planning. Okay, but I can also be very intentional about doing motor planning. That's kind of why it's there. If I do these three, it's going to improve my motor skills in general, which will help all skills. Okay, all right. So let's look at the first one: postural stability. What is that? This is how I look at it. I need a strong core. I need stable joints. I need trunk control, right? Because my trunk is the tree. I need to be able to control my trunk, and I need neck control. I need to be able to turn my head up, down, left, right, all of these things. Vision is also a very important part of it because my eyes also have muscles. I don't mean sight. I don't mean the ability to see clearer. I mean strong eyeball muscles because they are overlooked, no pun intended. And if I have time tonight, I will get to vision. If not, you can ask me about it some other time. Okay, so let's look at core engagement. So this is where we can all kind of participate here. So I want everybody on the ground on their stomachs. And if you don't want to, that's fine too. Okay, that's fine. All right, so I'm on my stomach. Engaging my core, one way is to do prone extension. Okay, so doing things from this position. I can roll a ball. I can play patty cake. I can be in this position to do stuff. Okay, if I don't want to do the floor, then I'll get on something that's going to help me work on that extension. So maybe I'll have something I have to put it on top. Okay, and this is working my core. All the muscles that run along the back of my spine make up my core. Okay, I can do things like in the picture at the top left is a scooter. Okay, I'm pulling kids on scooters. It's a great way. They're getting vestibular input and they're working on that core strength, that prone extension. Okay, so 1,000 ways to do that. If you have a swing, well, I'll get to that in a second. I'll get to that one later. All right, the second one is supine flexion. Okay, so I'm on my back. Everyone's on their back right now. So this is, and what I want to do is I want to bring my knees up and tuck my chin, as close to this fetal position as I can. All right, think of 1,000 ways to get kids to do this. Okay, I can make an egg, and they have to rock back and forth. Okay, or they have to roll side to side. If they have a scooter, scooters are great. I love scooters. They're fantastic. I'm going to sit on my butt and I'm going to scoot across the floor. That's flexion. Or maybe I just scoot on the floor. That's fine too. Okay. I'm going to unshare this real quick. Okay. If you have suspension, okay, a great way to work on flexion. Having kids pick up their feet. And maybe they have to swing from one place to another. Okay, that's what I'm looking at. You'll see the kids that can't do it, and they'll kind of do this, right? They don't flex, although they'll have their legs straight. Things like that. Or even, even on a swing. Even kids on a swing. So I'm flexing. And maybe I have to kick a ball. Boom, kick the ball. Boom, kick the ball. Swings I love swings. They're great. But not everybody has them to use. Okay. Okay, so shoot, I should just keep it on myself. Sorry, I'm sorry. I don't know why I keep doing this. Let me do this again. Crawling. Everybody get down and crawl. Okay. Think of when I'm crawling, I'm engaging my core. This is great. Okay. What kids that have difficulty, you'll see they'll do this. They'll sit back on their ankles and they'll scoot. And that's not crawling. That's scooting. They'll see them do this. Or they kind of walk like this. And they're not crawling. So what I do is maybe place my hand on their back or their shoulder and push them forward. This is where I like to use unstable surfaces, big mats and pillows, and things like that promote me flexing my core. So here's a cheese wedge. Let's say I have a kid crawl up. The second I got to change levels, now I'm already pushed down. It's going to make me engage. It's going to make me flex my knees. So crawling over big things, under big things, and working on that shifting where I have to bring my knee up, bringing those knees up is going to help with that flexion and engaging that core. Also, high kneel. A high kneel is here. Here's a high kneel. Okay, this is not a high kneel. And this is not a high kneel. This is a high kneel. This is going to hold my pelvic floor. Okay, so if I have a game where I have the kids in a high kneel, maybe they have to place things up high. So everyone get in a high kneel and you can feel it and try to hold it there for a bit. Okay, so maybe they have to pick things. And reaching up above me is going to bring my hips up. As opposed to if I'm doing something here, catching a ball or something, they're going to start doing this. But if I'm reaching up, it's going to promote that pelvic floor, okay? You can do any of that stuff on an unstable surface. Again, making it unstable is going to make me shift, and it's more fun. It's maybe I have to hold it there for 10 seconds, maybe try to beat my time, these kinds of things. Unstable surfaces, things like the Bosu ball are great because I can flip it upside down. Okay, and I'm working on that high kneel. And that's going to give me a stable trunk. Strong core, not stable trunk. Strong core and strong pelvic floor. Okay, I got to pick up the pace a little bit. I'm running behind. All right, joint stability. We talked about this before. So making sure, this is stuff we talked about, the dead weight, the shifting weight, resistive weight. We talked about that. But what I'm looking for is that co-contraction. So things where I have to hold a weight maybe above my head and hold it there, or things like that. Or this is where when I'm crawling up and over the unstable surfaces, I'm also helping that joint stability. Body weight, things that push and push back. Another reason I love the Bosu ball is these. I push on them and they push back. Okay, that's things like that. Climbing in Lycra. If anyone uses Lycra, there's a whole Lycra is a fantastic fabric that if you can hang it from it, you pull on it, it pulls back. But you push on it, it pushes back. I'm looking for that co-contraction. That's the key word for joint stability. Excuse me. Any questions on joint stability? Okay. All right, so trunk control. Control is my, I'm gonna, probably easier if I do this one. Okay, so trunk control, I have the diagonal movement pattern. So I always talk about picking up groceries and putting them on the shelf. So going from here to here, from low to high. I'm going to focus. I'm going to be intentional about having kids do that. If everyone right now put a book on the floor and put it up on your desk, or the other way. Okay, I'm crossing midline. I'm shifting. I'm going from low to high. Okay. Also that diagonal pattern. Sorry. Pardon me. rotational, excuse me. It's also rotate. This is also rotational, but I'm just side to side also. So that's where like having a club or something where I swing, I'm working on that trunk control. You'll see right away kids that don't have that good trunk control, they just kind of do this. They're doing it from their arms, or they do it too much. I've forgotten the other ones. Side bending. So you can do it sitting here, right? So I have something low, I'm picking it up, putting it up high, or taking it up high and I'm working on that side bend. And then again, this is where being on an unstable surface is really helpful because it makes me control my trunk. So anything I do on an unstable surface where I'm sitting, I take my legs away. Oh gosh, oh my gosh. Okay. I got a fake hip. So, and I have to throw a ball back and forth. This is all, I'm doing all of that. I have to catch a ball or throw a ball. This is a balloon, but it's making me control my trunk. And then apply the same thing to, is it neck control yet? I'm sorry. The last one would be torsion. Torsion is one where, so let's say I pick up something heavy. I'm here and I come to here. Torsion would be making sure I extend fully. And that's where, again, reaching. I'm reaching up, so I have to extend fully. So I'm going from full flexion to full extension. So think of ways to do that. That's where like catching a big ball and throwing it or catching it. That's why I like reaching up, because it's going to open me up. So I'm going at full extension to full flexion, things like that. You can all try it while you're sitting. You'll notice it, because a lot of times when we pick things up, we just kind of hover here, right? And we're kind of still in flexion or way back there, but I want to bring it up controlled and hold it there somehow. Maybe I have to hand it. That's why, again, putting things up higher, great. Okay. Getting good at the screen sharing thing. And then head and neck control is kind of the same thing, but for my neck. This is where you're using anti-gravity stuff. So things like swings, things that aren't, again, uneven. But I'm keeping my neck. I'm keeping my neck off. So, this is where I like to use the yoga ball. So again, I'm in full extension, but if kids have trouble with that, maybe I'll just focus on my neck. And I want to do different positions. So I'm here as well. So throwing a ball or catching a ball or just rolling. If you have a swing, a lot of times I'll be at the playground, or I'll even help hear practitioners like say this. So, you know, everyone knows how to use a swing. I can sit in a swing. This is how it's intended to use. When I see a kid do this, I get excited. I hear parents or other practitioners say, no, sit it right. This is a great way to work on that extension. So I'm swinging, and maybe I gotta grab something, or I catch a ball, or I throw a ball. Then I'm working on that extension, and I'm working on and the neck as well. Right? I'm strengthening all of that. It's a great way to work on all this stuff. And I'm getting vestibular input. Fantastic. And it's rhythmic and linear. But yeah, swings can be fantastic. I love using swings. Okay. That is postural stability. Those are different ways to work on posture, but I'm being cognizant about the kid's posture and working on that core, joint stability, trunk, and neck. And we'll talk about vision if we get time, and ways to strengthen the eyes. Because if my eye muscles aren't very strong, then I might wiggle. My eyes are going to wiggle, right? And it's going to make it hard to look at something for a long time and pay attention. If my eyes start wiggling, that's going to make my head move. If my head's moving, now I'm activating my vestibular system and my alert level is going up. So strengthening the eyes can not only help me my gaze and fixation and track, but it's also going to help me pay attention. And it can also keep my emotions regulated, because my vestibular system is not going to be activated as much. But we'll get to that. Okay, coordination. Okay, the foundation of coordination is having a center line down my body. Okay, everything I do pivots on this axis between my right side of my body and my left side of my body. If I want to throw something, I pivot on this axis. If I'm walking, I'm pivoting on this axis. Anything I do when I'm turning that involves coordinating something, there has to be this middle of my body and the two sides of that midline have to work together. If they don't work together well, it makes coordinating super difficult, okay? So there's crossing midline, where I take my right hand and I bring it to the left side of my body, okay? It could be my right eye and looking to the left, or my kicking and taking my right leg and kicking it. That's crossing midline. There's working midline, where my hands have to come together and do something in the middle of my body. Maybe it's eat, maybe it's write, maybe it's untie a knot or tie my shoes, right? There's symmetrical, think of picking up a bar, or asymmetrical, climbing. Unilateral, which would be my right hand, my right foot, and then reciprocal, which would be right hand, left foot. You don't have to get that complicated, but I'm going to pay attention to all four of these, because if I see kids struggling, then that's where I'm going to focus, okay? So here's some activities you can do. Crossing midline. Let's do, and we can all do this, okay? I can't see if anyone is doing any of these activities, but it doesn't matter. If you can do it, great. If not, don't worry about it. All right, so it can be this simple. If you have some pillows or a couple of balls, I'm gonna move this out of the way. Here I have a straight line, and I'm gonna crawl, okay? By crawling, it's gonna keep one arm, it's gonna make me use only one arm. I'm gonna use one arm to grab a ball, to put it on that side. Go to the next. Grab an object, move it over, okay? Boom. You'll see kids that struggle with this. This is what they'll do. That's not crossing midline. That's not crossing midline. That could mean they struggle with crossing that midline. If I have difficulty with crossing midline, then they're going to have trouble coordinating all sorts of things, okay? This is where I love to use sticks and bats and stuff like that and hitting things. Anytime I put a stick in a kid's hand, it's going to promote two-hand use, and I'm going to cross that midline, okay? Automatically. Kids that struggle with it, you'll see this. We'll tell them to hit something. Let's get this out here. And they'll do this. They won't, say two hands, and they'll go back, and then they'll start doing it. And they'll spin, okay? That, I'm going to constantly promote that double hand use. So smashing things, hitting things, because every kid loves to smash, most kids love to smash things. So things like sticks, bats, clubs, these things can be great because I'm working, and that's the foundation to coordination, right? Two limbs working together. Ropes, I won't talk about ropes today, but that's another fun way to do it. Oh, well, why not? I'm standing right here. I got a rope. All right, so everyone tries to jump rope. That's great. I'm gonna put this up real quick. I don't have kids jump rope anymore. I have them roll ropes. Not every kid can do this. This can be difficult. This is more for my older kids, but it depends on the kiddo. Some of the kids like it. All I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get a rope. I'm gonna hold two ends of it, and I'm just gonna have them cross their hands. If you have a rope with you, then you can try this, okay? And by having my hands crossed, I'm gonna go to one side of my body. I've got a low ceiling, so I can't do it too well, but I'm just gonna have them do this, okay? And that's it. And then I'll do the other side, right? And if I get really good at it, then I can start making that figure eight, things like that. And it can be overhand, underhand, it doesn't matter. Some of the kids will automatically go overhand. But that's what I'm going for, that crossing that hand, okay? There's a whole thing to rolling ropes where you can get really, really creative and really complicated and do some cool stuff like that. But you can just keep it simple. Cross your hands and roll ropes. And it's that easy. And it's fun. Maybe they can hit a ball across with their rope. Something like that. Screen. Okay, so that's crossing midline. Now also working midline. I'm going to grab my rope, my big rope. 1 second. Okay. So working midline, there's these pictures here. I haven't been even bringing up these pictures, but you can kind of see. So things where kids have to hold ropes and pull. Things in the middle of their body are great. You can use that. So having a rope in the middle of my body, having a rope, big fat rope, and I have to pull something in like this in the middle of my body. You'll see kids right away that have difficulty with it. They'll kind of do, some kids can do crossing midline, but they can't do working midline. So a fun game to play is to try to, if I have something heavy on the end of a rope and I throw it, I got to knock it over, and then I can pull it back in like I'm fishing. And I do it again. I knock over another one, and then I got to pull it in. It's a great way to work on that midline, things like that. One of my favorite activities is balloon bob. And I don't know what to do with my balloon. Where'd my balloon go? Balloon bop is one of my favorites. All you need is a balloon and some kind of stick. This is an old pillow hockey stick. But balloon bop, that's it. I'm just going to bop. Just going to bop the balloon. Try to keep it up. And I'm going to prompt 2 hands. And you'll see right away, a lot of kids will go to 1 hand. No, 2 hands, 2 hands. Or maybe they have to balance it, stuff like that. Who knows? And another one, club smash. So earlier we talked about swinging the club at an object this way. And now at the ground. I'm going to put a dot. Maybe I'll put a dot on the ground or maybe a stuffed animal. And they got to smash it as much as they can, okay? That's where you're having clubs comes in handy because this is soft. I can hit the ground. Things like the RMT club, they're really soft. They're made for smashing. You can smash these things. Sometimes it's hard to find a club to smash on your floor. You don't want to wreck the floor. You don't want kids to get hurt. But big, soft things, and I would put maybe a mat down as well. Okay. Okay, so that's working midline. And having kids coordinate their limbs symmetrically and asymmetrically, a great one to do this. We can all do this right now. This is so we could do a mirror game. If everyone stands up, and it can be as simple as this. You're the teacher, I'm the teacher, you're the kids. You can do it sitting down if you want, and you're just following me. Whatever, right? And then I can even add in feet. But keeping it simple. If anyone's heard of brain gyms, one of my favorite activities from brain gym is the cross crawl. And I usually, this is one of my warm-ups, is I just have the kids hand to knee. And you'll see right away, kids that have trouble, so they'll start doing this. It's hard to cross that midline, hard to be reciprocal, okay? So I'll usually start off and I'll give them some tactile feedback so they know where their hand is. Here's your hand, here's your knee, and I'll do that for them. And then, okay, and then we'll do one side. We'll try to get 5 or whatever, 10 maybe, as many as we can. And then I'll do the second, all right, use this hand and this knee. So now I felt it, and now I know where it is, okay? And then, okay, we're gonna grade it up. We're gonna go opposite, boom. And that's when kids do this again. Okay. Oh, I've seen questions. How about the safety? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess your battery is low, so we are getting messages.
Oh,
laptop battery. It messaged.
Sorry. How's that? I came prepared this time. Yeah, the safety and the rope activity, it depends. You will have kids hit themselves in the back of the head. That'll happen. It doesn't have to be a rope. Again, a rope, it's just, I'm doing this. Find ways to do this. One of the coolest things that I found, anything that promotes movement, I have lots of weird things. Like this is some ribbons. This is a piece of fitness equipment called the core blade. I duct taped to a old PVC handle. And it's the same thing as rolling ropes, right? My hands are crossed. And it's fun. Kids want to do this. They want to swing because it makes noise. Or maybe they get a flap like the wings, stuff like that. Anything that promotes movement. Sticks are great. Oh, I see. I did have my. All right. Okay, let's move on. Oh, and yeah, sorry, I'm not gonna do that right now. So if you have a ball, things like ball beats. So maybe, and if you don't pull your sock out, ball a sock out, and just starting with a ball. Simple. Then we're getting into like simple motor skill stuff, right? But I'm being intentional about starting off with one hand on one side. Okay, and then I'm going to be intentional about doing the other side. If kids have difficulty with that midline stuff, I'll do two hands and catch in the middle. Or maybe rugby balls are really good for this because they're nice and big. I like to use the rugby balls because they're really big. Mine are out in the yard somewhere because my kids love to play with them. Okay, so then I'll go here and then I'll take it a step further, right? And that's all we're doing, back and forth. That's simple. And you can come up with 1,000 things to do with a ball to hit your knee, whatever, around the world, stuff like that. Okay.
We're still getting that message of battery low.
My battery's low?
I think so. I don't know. It's okay.
It says I have 75% and I just plugged it in.
Then no problem. Let's go on.
All right. Okay. So anything with sticks, bats, ropes, things that are going to promote movement and putting my hands together and crossing those midlines, okay? And also, it doesn't have to be just my arms, right? One thing I do, I don't have it here, but think of a toilet paper roll or a cardboard roll, and I look through my eye. And then I got to look from my right eye on things over here on the left side, and then vice versa, okay? That's crossing midline. I could also do it, play, listen to things as well. Right ear, left side. That simple, okay? Piece of cake. Okay. So we looked at posture, ways to strengthen posture and joint stability and all that. We talked about coordination. All that's going to help with motor planning. All motor planning is doing novel movements. If you go out tomorrow and you pick up a new sport, you're going to tax your motor planning. You're gonna use your motor planning to figure out how to do that sport. Something you get used to, you use your motor planning less, okay? If you did any of the activities that we just did and they were new to you, you were using your motor planning, right? You got to think. It's a coordinated activity. I have to stop and think about it and how my body has to move. So I can be really intentional about that. So doing all those kind of weird, fun, new games is going to help with motor planning anyway. And the kids are having fun because it's weird. But exploring movement and allowing the kid to kind of gravitate towards an object. So if they come into a gym, my gym, I'll have a couple of stations laid out. And I'm going to see what that kid gravitates to, and I'm going to use that and do my best because they're going to be motivated by it, okay? So if I want to work on motor planning, like I said, I can make up a weird game just on the spot. And I love to make obstacle courses. I think that's a great way to work on motor planning, okay? Obstacle courses, again, I do, we do, you do. Setting up obstacle courses, you can incorporate everything we just talked about. You can incorporate tactile activity, a vestibular activity, a proprioception activity, something to work on posture, something to work on coordination, all of these things. So maybe I'll usually set it up first. I'll set up a small obstacle course. Those kids that have trouble with motor planning, I'll probably do 2 steps, maybe 3, but keeping it very simple. It has to have a natural flow, almost like a circle, a start point and an end point. It has to be rhythmic, okay? So that kid somebody was talking about in the beginning where they're jumping and crashing, that can be part of an obstacle course. To add that, because he's seeking that, make that one step in the obstacle course. Jump, crash. Maybe he has to jump off something else. And so I'll do it. Once the kid has it, then we do it together. We set it up together. Because if I just let the kids set up an obstacle course, sometimes it doesn't make any sense. It's all over the place. They'll just set weird stuff up and it doesn't have any flow to it. So I do it together. And then once I see they've got it, I'm going to allow them to do it. If you've got a group, this is an awesome team building activity because you watch the kids work together and you see who's participating, who's not participating. You can even do things like if you have a couple of leaders in the group and they're doing all the talking, you can be like, you just got stung in the mouth by a bee and your mouth is swollen. You can no longer talk. I'm sorry. And maybe, make it fun. So now the leader can't talk, so the others have to step up. And that's getting a little bit more complex, but there's so many things you could do with an obstacle course. Incorporating all of this stuff, incorporating problem solving. You can put a fine motor thing. I like to throw in dot to dots or some math problems as well. Or one of my favorite things to do is, again, the rope. I'll have the rope hanging with a bunch of knots in it. And they're going to stop and they're going to get off the knots, but I'll put it really high. So they got to reach up and untie the knots. Things like that. Okay. We have 15 minutes left, I think. We're almost through everything. The last two things I find are pretty valuable. And if you can incorporate these into any, it'd be amazing. I want more people to incorporate these two things. So number one is oral motor. Oral meaning mouth, motor meaning movement. So mouth movement activities. Okay. When I incorporate mouth movement, oral motor, right? So think of when you purse your lips or blow. I have to have a good strong seal on my lips, or if I drink through a straw. Kids that have difficulty with motor planning, with tone, with just some sensory issues, sometimes have difficulty maybe even blowing through a straw or sucking through a straw. If I have trouble with that stuff, then regulation can be quite difficult as well, because we all do it. What do we do when we're stressed out? We purse our lips, right? We do that slow breath. Mouth strength and breathing are very close related, and we can teach calm breathing techniques through oral motor activities. Okay. You're also building core strength. And when I exhale slowly, I'm strengthening my flexion of my eyeballs. When I inhale, I'm strengthening the extension of my eyeballs. So I'm also helping with vision. It's also a great way to end a session. Is after I do all this stuff, maybe I'll do some oral motor activities, and that will look like this. Here's one thing I can do. This is let's do this. This is a 5-gallon jug of water. It doesn't have to be this big. It can be a milk jug. It can be a bowl of water. It doesn't matter. Okay, but in it is soap and water. And all I have is some medical tubing, so it's okay. It's safe for putting in your mouth. And I have it all the way in the bottom. And my goal is I try to get the kids to have the bubbles come all the way up. And you'll see right away, kids that have struggled, or kids that have difficulty with regulation or some mouth issues. They'll do that a lot. Or you'll see this. Right? What I'm going for is this. And now I'm also working on developing a midline, which is also very important. But things like that, bubble jug, whistles are cool. Where's my whistle? Whistles are great. Tornado whistles. That's super loud and annoying, but if you can stand it, something like that. Harmonicas, taking a straw and blowing feathers across. I don't know if anyone has a straw on them or not. Or I asked some people to bring some stuff, but I don't know if anyone did or not. But cut up a piece of paper and put it on your table right now and blow it. Simple activity. You can incorporate that on a swing, on a scooter. You could have a contest across the floor. Things like this are tough with saliva and everything. especially with COVID and all of that. But if you can pull it off, this is a great way to, great thing to add to your arsenal, as well as to end a session as well. Oh, I see. I'm sorry. I'm just reading a question. If we don't have indoor setup and we are working on a field with kids, then how are we going to use these to improve their sensory movements? Let me answer that at the end. I'll make sure I have some time at the end. That's a good question. Okay. Okay. All right. We have about 10 minutes left. I feel like I spoke quite a bit. Vision can get really complicated. I might save this for another time. I kind of wanted to open this up to any question, because that was a lot of information. I might pause here and skip through vision, because that gets into it. So I'm going to kind of skip ahead. But does anybody have any questions? I covered quite a bit.
I have a question.
Yes.
Yeah, it's actually related to that postural instability. If a kid, he always wants to lie on a floor every time. So is it something proprioceptive seeking behavior, or it's a postural instability?
He's always lying on the floor?
Yes, maximum. Like if we give him some activity, like while standing, or simply going inside the tunnel, that time also just want to lie down.
No, I'd have to see, but that sounds to me like weak core, right? So it's if I have a weak core, it's much easier for me to keep moving or to stop or to lay down altogether, as opposed to standing or moving slower. It's hard. It could be tactile, maybe. If he was tactile seeking, you'd probably see other kinds of behaviors as well. If it's just the floor laying, it sounds like it's difficult to be upright.
Okay.
Someone asked a question about like if working outside. So yeah, this is having the beauty about having a gym is the equipment, right? Especially a gym with like suspension, it's even more. But that's not always an option. So keeping it simple and using, reducing visual and audio can be really difficult outside. Maybe you can't do that, so you don't. If you can't do it, then you don't. Or maybe you use reducing input. So maybe things like earphones, or allowing kids to have their hoods up, or sunglasses can even help. As far as the other activities, things like mini trampolines, if you have those, or some Bosu balls, or jumping down hills, looking for ways to get vestibular, tactile, and proprioceptive activities where they're climbing and crawling and things like that. Vestibular can be tough outside, but that's where you get into your log rolls or your somersaults, things like that.
Hi, sir.
Hi.
I have a question. Actually, we have a kid here who does vestibular, proprioceptual, tactile, bilateral integration, everything he is able to perform without any behaviors. But what happens is when he is left alone without any activities, when he is left alone, he starts showing all type of behaviors such as visual stimming. He rotates his finger and just does the visual stimming. He just keeps on doing all the fingers visual stimming. And sensory, when we checked his tactile also, it's not like too much of bothering. So what might be the solution for it?
So why would he be stimming?
When I left him, like after all the activities, when I left him alone, and I made him sit for some time. He was having a good sitting tolerance, but when it comes to the after all the activities, it's like he's finishing all the activities, and it's happening that after finishing all the activities, if I make him sit, he sits for certain seconds and he just starts enjoying himself, just whirls around, and he just starts stimming. Stimming in the sense how he stims is, he'll keep his finger near his eyes and he'll just start rotating it. Yeah, the same way. Yeah.
Yeah, so stimming is just we all stim. Stimming is just a way for us to get ourselves back to that green zone. Either he's too high and excited, he just had a good time and he's just trying to bring himself back down, or maybe he doesn't want to sit yet. But the thing about autism is that communication piece. It can be that he can't communicate what he wants. Maybe he wants to continue, or maybe he's fine. He might be fine, but it could be a way for him to get back down to baseline. And it feels good. It feels good. There's something about the peripheral vision and autism where the head-on staring is not possible. So the peripheral vision, everything they do is out of the peripheral. So this movement is soothing. It's calming me down. It's getting me regulated. Does he maybe rock or hum?
Okay.
Is he doing that kind of stuff as well, or is it just the?
He just stims. He doesn't rocks or does something, but he just stims.
Okay.
He just stims, he jumps and he stims, and that's it. What he does.
Any of those things are stimming. So yeah. So it's this. So yeah, it could just be him. This is a type of stimming. So it's just him. I don't know. I can't say definitively what it is, but it sounds like he either really enjoyed himself and is just trying to bring himself back down, or maybe he wants to do more and this is his way. But if you're saying he's happy, it seems happy. It could just be him kind of calming down.
Okay.
Just to soothe himself. He had a good time.
Okay. And one more doubt, sir. Actually, we have a other kid. He's like he does all the activities. Like he's well with the activities. But what happens is when he sees some objects, the visual sensory issues he's facing. But what is the challenge is when he sees any objects, it is not like a decorative objects or colorful objects or something like that. When he sees any object, he just goes around it and he just clenches his fist and he'll look at it and he'll laugh. He'll start laughing.
This kind of thing. Like, So, yeah. Okay. So kids on the spectrum, and this isn't true for every kid. There's never, but it's often very common for the visual system is so powerful that this is soothing. They often have a thing, and it sometimes it's like it jingle jangles and it moves, and they're just kind of here, and they just have it, right? So having that thing is soothing. It's a lot of times they don't have that that internal body awareness, that interoception that we get when our tactile, our proprioception, and vestibular systems are all working together. That's what helps you and I regulate ourselves, because ours are working okay. His are, I'm probably going to guess, aren't. So it's very common for kids on the spectrum to have that super powerful vision. These are one of the reasons why these kids gravitate towards screens so much. All kids do, but especially kids on the spectrum, they also have, because it's so visual, and they use that as their calming skill or their regulatory skill. They're not taking deep breaths, right? They're not doing any of that stuff because they don't know how to. They internally don't know. It's not innate like it is for you and I. So that could be the reason.
So how do we control it, sir?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would keep giving as much body awareness activities as they can. Doing the best to reduce visuals. If you can, clear the room of this kind of stuff. He might seek it. He will go looking for it. But that's where I would get into more kids on the spectrum that profound or that severe. That's where I would use more of a therapeutic clinic setting where there's lots of Lycra, and I can get them in a big thing of Lycra and roll them around, or maybe on a big swing and get that big slow input. Because what we're doing is when we start getting into that stuff, you're really helping them get that feeling in their body, which helps at the very base of the brainstem, helps kind of start connecting the brain and the body. How old is the kid?
He's just 17 months.
17 months. Oh, he's still just young. So yeah, the sooner you can get, if you know of a clinic that does sensory integration therapy, that I see that helping. It's not going to be behavior you teach them. It would be more getting the body awareness. And it might be something they just do for the rest of their lives as well. As long as it doesn't, that's when you got to start to look at, does it get in the way of function? Or is it just weird looking, That's where you got to kind of make that call. But 17 months is pretty young, so you got some time.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm. There's no more questions. That's fine. No big deal. Just remember keeping it simple. Find ways to kids. Oh, sorry.
I have a question. Yeah, sorry. So actually, kid, a 5-year-old kid, having obsessed with books only. Every time just want to see. Every time just want to turn the pages. So it's something we should.
Sorry, I just want to make sure he just wants to turn the pages of the book.
Yes, just want to see continuously from morning till evening. Every time just want to see. Yeah, turning the pages. That's all.
That kind of falls along those same lines as the thing the last.
Yeah. So should we like my question is, should we stop to do that, or we can just alternate some activity for that?
How old is the kid?
5 years old.
5 years old. Yeah, that's where a lot of kids on the spectrum that have that with low communication and that do that lots of stimming. That's where we need to get from here to here. Yes. We need to kind of find, so getting in a bed sheet and rolling around and squishing and getting that deep pressure. If they like that, then we're kind of building that body awareness. And now I'm starting to feel my body, and I start to pay attention internally, more mindfulness. Again, that visual, especially for kids on the spectrum, in that kind of severe, profound realm, relies so much on their vision. And I don't know why. I'm not an expert in autism. I'm not. I'm not going to pretend to be, but I do. That's a common thing that I see, that I've seen for a long time, is that the vestibular system doesn't work that great, or their tactile system isn't jiving, or they can't internally move their body the way, so they rely wholly on their vision. A lot of them don't like it when I take their vision away, because I can't see. I don't know where my body is. I don't feel good. So getting kids used to moving quite a bit, rolling and pushing, pulling, crawling, using my body synergistically, things like that. Being on I would experiment with swings. I would experiment with deep pressure, these kinds of things, and giving that to them throughout the day.
Okay, thank you so much.
Sir, my name is Revati. I have a question. It's regarding offline classes, in offline schooling, all the sensorial activities, tactile activities which you have showed now. It was really nice, and we can also try that. But my point is, now in this pandemic, we all are at home, and through online only we are conducting classes. There are few children who are still not attentive in the class, like 4 years children, like LKG and UKG children mostly. Nursery though, okay, we can give reason because they are too small, and sometimes they'll be crying in the class, sometimes they'll be running around, they won't sit at one place, but still we have to focus and we have to take the class. That is our duty. But can you give some inputs, like, or few hints, few points, or some activities through online which we can make the class interesting and to grab their attention? Child also should have that. They also should feel free and attentive in the class. So for that, any inputs from your side, sir, if possible?
Online is so hard. I don't envy anyone doing it. Yeah, that's a tough one. So are you the teacher on the other side? Are you want the kids in their homes to pay attention more? Is that what you're asking?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So I mean, there's not much you can do, other than doing the best, find what motivates the kid and incorporating that into the lesson somehow. But parents at home, just making sure that kids, maybe, so if they have to sit at a desk, maybe you switch out their seat for a yoga ball, or letting them have their shoes off on something bumpy, like
Okay.
things like this they can rub their feet on, or sitting on a stool that wobbles.
Okay.
During their breaks, they do things like a bubble jug.
Like warm-up exercises.
Yeah. Any incorporating a lot of movement breaks, incorporating a lot of outdoor time if they can, or big gross motor, everything we just covered. Any one of those activities, or a few of them.
Yes.
Yeah, it's tough. Reducing screen time as much as we can because we're getting they're ready.
Yes, sir.
It's a tough one. I'm
Yes, sir.
great answer.
It's really tough because in this pandemic, we are all go through that situation where we are not able to give attention to the child. One-to-one interaction is not happening. And time limit is there. Within that time limit, we have to complete the activities. So all these problems we are facing as a kindergarten teacher, especially.
Well, you're not alone. All the part of the world in lockdown.
Yes, sir.
Parts of the state are still going through the same.
Yes, sir.
It's
Thank you.
I don't have a great answer for you. I'm sorry. Other than making sure those kids get movement during the day.
Hi, Matt. This is Pooja
Hi.
here. I have a concern. Can I go ahead and ask?
Yes.
So, Matt, I have a neighbor and they have a daughter who's like about 20 months young now. What I have observed in that child is very much normal. There's no concerns and issues with that. But one thing what I noted was now this child, whenever she gets bumped to the wall, or she gets pricked by a thorn, while walking on the or a pebble or a stone, her senses, she does not realize that she's been hurt until and unless her parents observes it later in the evening while getting her ready or putting her to the bed. When they see that there is changes, there's something swollen or anything, or there's a bump on her head, until then they do not realize like what have happened. And this girl, she does not express her pain or anything, like she's got hurt. So her I don't know what's wrong, like is it like expressing why the expressions are not coming out from her, or the senses, something wrong, so how can I help such kind of kids who are not expressing out the pain, basically?
My first thought would be, does she feel the pain? Yeah, my first thought would be, because generally if kids are hurt or they have pleasure, they're going to tell somebody, generally, right? Unless there's like, selective mutism or something else going on. But that's my first thought, is maybe she doesn't feel it. So if I'm thinking, okay, maybe it's she has difficulty with her tactile system. If that's the case, I would make sure she has lots of deep pressure activities or compression. So things like a weighted vest, or you can get compression clothing. It's expensive. So I go to the thrift store and I get long underwear that compresses, things like that, one size too small. Things like that. But, the beanbag things where she's getting smushed throughout the day. Joint compression. So if I have a kid's arm, here's their elbow, this is their elbow, bicep, wrist, joint compression. I just do this. Stuff like that. Giving that kid deep pressure. Help that tactile system. And then become more, also anything we talked about, vestibular, heavy work, that kind of stuff, can all help get her more internally aware. Does she know she has to use the restroom when she has to go, or does she know when she's hungry?
No, not really, because she's just 18 months young. So she, she's not been potty trained or anything currently.
So that to me, so she's only 18 months. That's something I would keep my eye on. I would look at her, make sure she's hitting her milestones, because that's a bit of a small red flag to me. I was like, she's not feeling she's in pain. So making sure she gets, she's little, so give her lots of vestibular input, squeezes, that kind of stuff.
Okay. Thank you, Matt. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Okay. Any other questions? I'm gonna wrap this up here. Just remember, anytime you're working with the kids, having fun. I feel like that to me is probably one of the most important things. Is if you're having fun and the kids having fun and they're moving, they're gonna benefit. They're gonna benefit. There's a lot of different people here from a lot of different backgrounds, working with a lot of different kids in a lot of different capacities. This stuff, doing your best to fit this stuff in. I could talk to teachers specifically and give you teacher tips, PE tips, OT tips. There's a lot of different tips. I kind of gave a broad overview of some motor skill and sensory activities you can do with your kids. But at the end of the day, a lot of it is always based in play. It's going to always incorporate tactile input, heavy work. Let's call it heavy work, right? Moving my muscles, and then vestibular input. Okay. If anyone needs any kind of resources, over here on the right,